Vibe.
We can say that and then just briefly explain.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, so it looks like we are live. Yay! Hello, authors. Welcome this morning. We are talking with Kaeleya Rayne, and she has some really cool stuff that we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell you a little bit about her, and then we're going to jump into the questions. And if you have questions for us, put them in the comments and we will get to them as we're going. But first, Kaeleya, welcome, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you and to speak to your group of amazing people that you are here to help and serve. So I am a what I call a mind-body communication specialist. And I've been working for 21 years with women in business and sometimes men in business too, it depends, but mostly it's women in business, and have over 8,500 one-to-one hours with clients. So I've had so much time to really understand, what are the running themes, where are the walls that people run into, and what's really going on. And these very simple ways to shift things have come forward over the years, and I rely on them and they just work so well. So one of the skills that I have is I'm an intuitive channel. And what that means is that for me, I really came in like this. So at a young age, I really didn't know that everybody wasn't wired like that. I had no idea. And I chose my parents, because that's kind of the way I think about, we choose our parents for our own evolution. I chose them well in the sense that they totally supported my way of being. And I didn't know that they weren't wired like that. In fact, my mother came from a long line of healers who taught me how to use my hands to remove pain from my body, which then I used in my business. But they didn't have the skill set of these, connections and communications and being able to channel information that was incredibly accurate and then intuitively move through life. That was just really something that I might even have not only come in with, but had a chance to refine because of the way that they raised me, because there was a lot of that. There was a lot of room for that. So, that's what I do. And I'm really on a mission. I was thinking about this just before we got on. I was just listening in and checking in because that's how I work. And I was hearing, spread the message. And the message really is that we are being asked to step up into a next level being, a next level of beingness, less angst and disconnect and destruction on the body in order to succeed. And really understanding that we all have such a powerful purpose here, all of us, and that it matters. For some people, it may be staying home and tending to their children and their dogs, and it matters so much more than they think. Or it may be someone who's a transformational writer who's going to change lives around the world, right? And for about 25 years now, I've been hearing the same message because I studied for a long time, and I'll wrap in a second here. Before I actually hung a shingle that said, I can help you, I'd been studying for quite some time. And because that was really important to me, to be able to say, yes, I really can see what's going on exactly in your mind and body, and tell you exactly why you're not hitting your business goals. I can tell you exactly why you're running into a wall and repeating old patterns and the beliefs and the old negative stuff is hanging on. I can see and tell you that exactly. And so that was about 10 years of study before I ever actually hung a shingle out to say that I could do that. And for 5 of those years, I was receiving the same message that just wants to be said here, which is that peace is found in the deeper connections. And that's why, whether it's a deeper connection with self or with the world. And I think that as an author, as a transformational author, we really are connecting to the world in a very specific way. And it's so important. So I'm so honored to be speaking to your group here today, because it's a big piece for me that matters a great deal. Yeah.
Like when we initially talked, we had such a great conversation around all of this stuff, and you're talking about, that next level of being, and the people I work with, they are stepping into that. as, a lot of them are already business owners. Some of them aren't yet though. And they're stepping out and saying, I have a story, it's super important, and I know I want to impact the world. And they're stepping into becoming an author. So, because you work with business owners and you're recognizing a lot of these, the patterns and stuff, I did want to talk about that in relationship to these people stepping out and writing their stories, because I know, that there's so much going on in your head when you're thinking about it. There are things that keep people from kind of stepping forward and saying, okay, yes, now. I see people all the time step forward and say, I'm doing it. And then they go, oh no, I can't right now.
Right.
So that's kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about today, is that, the intuition, the stuff going on in your mind and body, all those relationships. So can you talk a little bit about like why it's important for people writing books to start recognizing like the old stories and, different patterns and stuff that still run in the show?
Yeah, I mean, the simplest way, just right at the top, is because you're going to have a mismatch with your desire and your goals. So you may be saying outwardly, I'm ready to write this book, I know it's why I'm here, but your body's like, not right now. And you can feel it, and it feels like a no, but the rest of you saying yes. And so there's this mismatch in moving forward. And that's what I see over and over again, is what I call a misalignment or a mismatch in desire. And reality, you be fighting against yourself, right? Until you take a look and shine the light on, well, what's in the way here? Do I have this recoil, this hesitation, this freeze, this kind of procrastination or stall out feeling when I actually start to move forward? What is that? And it's always so clear for me. And the thing is that it's buried in the tissues, in the stories, in the patterns and beliefs, and it's not easy to find. Like, that's why I come and speak about these things, because I mean, over the years, so many clients, right, who have just been like, and they're brilliant, why can't I figure this out? And I'll say, well, because this is actively running your show still. It's still actively running the show, and it's just hidden from you. So instead of being the puppeteer, you're actually on the strings, and you just can't see what's really going on. And there's no judgment about it. It just is what it is, And the thing to remember too is that those stories, one of the things, the rules I have in the work that I do, is there's no judgment. We call it no jags. No judgment, assumptions, guilt, or shame. So we know going in that anything comes up, there's going to be there's no shame or guilt or judgment or assumption going to be thrown at it from me or the client. It's just like, yeah, this is what we're seeing. So that it has a chance to emerge. And the thing that feels so important too is that to say is that there's those old beliefs, patterns, and stories, they came up to serve. They were put in place to serve when you were at a different time in your life. And they're not trying to be your enemy. It's just that they're still operating, thinking that this is what you still want. You haven't informed them, no, I've actually grown. I actually don't want to stay safe and hide and play small. I actually want to expand and be in full expression. And so that agreement, that's part of the work, seeing what's actually going on and then getting them to this place of agreement, making new agreements so that those beliefs and patterns and stories say, oh, I get it. I'm not needed in that way anymore. And that's why it becomes such a powerful shift so quickly, because when you work with the body that way, instead of trying to force and push, you get these huge openings and transformations because there's an alignment, there's an agreement that gets made. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's crazy to think about it as like a safety mechanism to help keep us,
from 100%.
Yeah. From, stepping out and getting hurt, because our bodies are telling us, oh no, we need to stay safe. We need to stay small. We need to keep that story in here. And so that's why people bounce back and forth like that. And it's so that it's funny because a lot of times we don't recognize that we're doing it. We just keep playing it out and playing it out and playing it out. And, like I said, I've seen people do it over years. So, yeah.
One big thing I see too is hurt and disappointment. The resistance to conflict, to disappointment, and to being hurt is so high in the must-have list inside that they don't realize it.
Mhm.
And so it's like, being able to see on the outside of your own cereal box, right? It's like, it's hard to read the ingredients. It's hard to read what's really going on until you get those skills, and then you can.
Mhm.
Once you get the skills, you can actually do that, which is one of the things I teach too, because I want my clients to be able to do it for themselves.
Right. Right. That's really important.
It
Um,
is. Yeah.
Yeah. And also when we had talked before, something else I loved was you're talking about, people working through sacrifice and how that happens. And I feel like that's really related to part of the fear of trying to fit a book in, because, people don't want to have to work through sacrifice, but they're probably already doing it. So then I also see the ones that are already doing it, and then they cram that book in too, and then they just end up overwhelmed and it doesn't get done. So can you talk a little more about that work through sacrifice and what that does to us, especially for somebody who's a writer?
Yeah. I think that, sacrifice is a really common energetic way of being.
Mhm.
And it's because we care. So we'll take on the load. We'll take on, because we can. We're incredibly resilient as human beings. And so we will pile on, take on, take it. And we will, it's a different kind of receiving. It's almost like a toxic receiving, right? So then we get so full, there's no room to actually do the thing. And so we end up being in sacrifice. But the game that I want to point out while we're on this is that that's actually set up. That's another way to keep you from actually doing the thing, is to be, it's sneaky, right?
Mhm.
So, sacrifice is there's a very simple way to see it. But some of the ways that it shows up that I've seen in my clients, it'll show up in the physical as migraines, digestive troubles, fatigue, body pains, because those things keep you incredibly preoccupied,
Mhm.
right? And then you can't be in flow. It's very hard to write when your stomach's up and down, or you have a migraine and you're flat on your back, or you're extremely tired, or you have body pain. I mean, it's those kind of, again, intelligence operating. This is why, again, it's so important to do the work to look at, well, because that's just a communication in the body. The body's just saying, hey, I'm not sure I really want this.
Yeah.
I know you do, but I don't know if it's safe. Where are we really headed with this? Another way that sacrifice shows up is in the overwhelm, like you said, feeling overwhelmed, feeling disconnected from our bodies, from our loved ones. We can start to feel like we're going to crack, because we're just carrying everything on our shoulders. How could we possibly also take on writing a book? And again, it's incredibly brave, I feel. And although I know a lot of people feel so committed to self-expression in a transformational way, it is incredibly brave, because remember, it hasn't been that long that being in your power and being expressive in that way, and potentially a stir the pot way, because transformation causes change, right? We're not saying, yeah, that's right, white is white, or gray is gray, or yeah, that's the cupboard. We're saying things that transform. And so there's a shift there, and there's a paradigm shift. And it hasn't been that long that wasn't safe to do.
Mm-hmm.
We would be clamped down and shut up. And so there is some of that overcoming of the natural response to going, is this really safe to really speak my truth? And so that's another way that sacrifice comes in a bit of a sneaky way, right? Because it's like, well, because the mind will say, well, am I sacrificing myself to speak my truth? Do you see?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that game will start to show up of like, well, maybe it's not worth it to be at risk.
Yeah.
And it's not always conscious. In fact, oftentimes it's not.
Mm-hmm.
But how it shows up are these, body issues, or overwhelm, or confusion, or a sense of, I just don't know if I'm really up for it. I don't know if maybe nobody will ever want to read this. Like all that negative self-talk that starts to show up. Like maybe I can't do this. Yeah. Maybe my story isn't that great. And I think, all that stuff. you can pretty much put into the, oh, I'm trying to keep myself from moving forward pile,
Yeah.
right, of stuff. Does that answer your question about how it shows up and what it looks like? Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit about the what was it we were talking about? I lost my my note here. Yeah, as far as fitting the book in. So like if somebody's already kind of doing this stuff in their business, are they, I mean, obviously they might still be doing the whole cycle of, am I worthy? Should I be sharing XYZ in my business? But what are some other things that people are doing, like when they're running a business and they're doing that?
Yeah. Let me just listen in for a second and listen. One of the things that I see really commonly, because I mostly work with business owners, are kind of sabotaging big projects.
Okay.
So one of my clients is a producer in Los Angeles. And when we started to do the deep dive and take a look, we found out that her body really didn't want to keep operating at this risk pace, because it's a big risk. You've got to go in, you got to sit in front of a whole bunch of people. You've got to go into the writer's room. There's no guarantee. And you might work on a deck that you're pitching for 4 or 5 or more months, and it might get a no. And you might think it's fantastic. So, and it's incredibly expensive because you've got to pay your team and all those kinds of things and still pay your own life. And so her body was, she was finding herself just getting really annoyed. And just like, I just don't care anymore. And I'm like, are you sure about that? Yeah, I'm just done. I'm like, really? Are you sure about that? She's like, damn it. I'm like, yeah, like this is what's happening. Is her pattern was to numb and just not care, because that's how she handled I don't want to be so disappointed that it rips me in two.
Yeah.
And so it would show up in her business as kind of unplugging at that really important moment in time, when what she really needed to be doing was have her energy full in, all in, because they can feel it.
Yeah.
We're wired to feel people. I mean, that's how we've survived as a species. We know when something's up, we can feel it.
Yeah.
And so she would show up for the meeting and she would look fantastic and everybody would love her, but she kept getting a yellow light, which is bring it back later, instead of a green light. And so she just got to show on ABC. I mean, that's the thing that was so exciting for us, was to see how when she shifted and went from this feeling in her body of blocking receiving at that really big level, because getting a show greenlit on ABC is a really big deal.
Yeah.
It's actually what she really wants to be doing with her time too. So it's like her dream was constantly over here, out of reach, and she was doing all the things to make it happen, but it was never dropping in, because down deep inside she was having a hard time receiving it.
Okay.
And it was like this feeling of blocking that we got down to her solar plexus. We could feel in her solar plexus that it was like, what if I really suck at this?
Yeah.
And then I've got a green lit show, and it's like, $100,000 a minute to film, to shoot this. So all that stuff was going on. She didn't even know.
Yeah. Wow.
Like that's because her body was communicating that to her, but it wasn't registering.
Yeah.
So then when we got her into communication, that sacrifice that was showing up in her business as unplugging at that crucial moment and losing the gig changed.
Wow.
Another client that I'm thinking of really quickly, how it was showing up for her in her business, when we went into her body, she didn't really want to do it. She didn't really want to run a business.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, we had to, take a look at this. And what was happening was that she was so passionate about what she does, but she was having really low return on or ROI. And so it was all this effort, and very little coming back to her. And so she was just getting more and more disgruntled. But the truth was, she didn't really want to be doing it. So the disgruntled piece was proof that she shouldn't be doing it. And do you know that she started doubling and now has full programs for the first time ever in all of her years of being in business? Because she got into agreement with that part of her and said, hey, let's do this together,
Yeah. That's
I don't want to be in
amazing.
sacrifice. Isn't that cool though, how it
Yeah.
works? Like it really does shift.
Yeah.
Are there other ways to speak about this, or does it feel clear about how it shows up in people's businesses?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. I loved your examples. I
Yeah.
was wondering, okay, so for just, anybody else who's watching this video, is there something that they can, that they should do if if they see that they're doing this pattern of, you know, stepping out, stepping back, sabotaging themselves? Could you name just a couple little things that they should do just to help them over the hump?
Yeah, for sure. Let me just listen in again around what wants to be shared here. One thing that I really am a big fan of is learning to listen to your body.
Mhm.
And so if you're, there's a skill involved with that, but you can start very simply by just saying, what am I really feeling? I feel hesitation. I feel myself pulling back. Like I can feel even in the reality of that feeling of like, I really don't want to sit down and write right now. What's the deal? It's like 9 o'clock. I'm writing between 9 and 4 or 9 and 3 with breaks. It's 9:15. What's going on? That tells you, well, there's something going on.
Mhm.
And then just to be able to either, shake it off, put a little music. It's like simple things, put a little bit of music on for 15, give yourself another, or, you can have the constraints where there's an agreement. So it's like, okay, I'll give you 15 more minutes. You can go outside, watch the birds, listen to some music, whatever you want to do, eat something, but in 15 minutes, go ahead and take a deep breath, open up the laptop, sit down and start writing and
Mhm.
enjoy it. So there's this kind of more of a constraints piece, like you almost would with a kid. It's like, okay, you got 15 minutes before you got to go to bed. And that's it.
Yeah.
And then the other piece of this is, some people really like to go within in the sense of, I want to understand more about what I'm really being, like what's really going on here.
Mhm.
So yeah, the shaking it off sounds great to get me in flow, but like I said, there are people who are like, yeah, but I want to know what it is. And so that's when journaling really helps. So
Mhm.
just give yourself 15 minutes to just write without it doesn't have to be about anything. There's no set intention. It just literally is asking the question, what do I need to know? And you could write for 4 minutes and get you know what? I really don't want to do this right now. My body really wants to be outside. And so for me personally, um, because I write so much, because I'm kind of like a content queen, I'm always writing and you know what it's like, right? I like yesterday, for example, I usually am up at around 6 and I have a very specific process that I do every day before I start my day
Mhm.
because it gets me into the right zone. I've worked out, I've walked the dogs, I've taken care of the hens, I've had a shower, I've had my coffee, I'm ready to go, I'm available. And yesterday morning, my body was so tired
Mhm.
that I literally slept for 3 more hours. And I just allowed myself to do that with no judgment. I was like, because I know better, because I know that if I just push and shove myself up
Mhm.
when I'm exhausted, I mean, it's not a norm. It happens probably, I don't know, maybe once every 3 or 4 weeks where my body's like, I'm really tired.
Yeah.
And so I'm a huge advocate for just listening to your body.
Mhm.
Just listen and say, what do you really want? And see what you might feel, see, hear, know, like everybody's different.
Mhm.
But just I know the world's going to change. If we start listening to our bodies, the world is going to change.
Yeah.
Because we're going to know when we're thirsty or when we need to go and talk to our husband or our wife or our kid because that thing that was said yesterday is not sitting right.
Mhm.
Or I have an intuition that my dog needs me or my mom needs me. See what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
we're meant to listen and be connected and not be in this like must do this now thing,
Mhm.
because I think that that's when we start to really see our bodies start to fall apart
Mhm.
because we're not listening and we're just forcing. You
Yeah.
think about how I'm thinking of horses because we just had the Kentucky Derby And you think about how if you just had a horse always running down a narrow track, it would go out of its mind.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be able to sustain that for very long. It has to be able to run free and move around and not be just in this narrow, have to push forward. And I think what happens is that life shows up. We've got from 6 until 10 at night to get something done.
Mm-hmm.
And we see time slipping away because life gets in the way sometimes. Sometimes we get in the weeds. As I feel like there can be this scarcity engagement
Mm-hmm.
with getting things done, where it's almost like, if I don't get this done now, it's not going to. And I feel, and I know I've seen this over and over again, and I've seen it with myself and all my clients, that when we just take a breath,
mm-hmm.
just relax. You can get, I've written pieces. One of my clients is a theologian professor at a large university. She's also the associate dean there. And I had her read one of my pieces once. And I said, how long do you think it took me to write that? She said, about 2 weeks. And I said, try 40 minutes.
Yeah.
She was blown away. She loves reading my stuff because it's all in flow and it's well written. You know what I mean? I think people who are like that like to read stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it took me 40 minutes because I just was in flow. And I think that's so important, is that our bodies want us to have a life outside of the laptop.
Yeah. Yeah. I
and we
completely
so
agree.
much more, right? Oh, was that what you say? I'm sorry.
I said I completely agree with that. I mean, if you're constantly, quashing your intuition, when your body's saying go outside, or take a break or take a nap or whatever it is, and just from my personal experience, I did that for decades of my life, and it was like you're quashing that, and then as a counterbalance to it, you're wanting to rebel, and you're angry, you're frustrated. And I was going to say too, like you mentioned about the writing in 40 minutes, the book that I just participated in, 21, my husband took my kids out to pick up dinner. Now they went to like 3 different spots because everybody liked different stuff, but they picked up dinner. And while they were out, I went, okay, I've got the time and I'm feeling good. The house is empty. It's quiet. I sat down and I wrote the whole chapter while they were out picking up dinner. And it's because I listen to myself now and I say, you know what, this is the moment. I sat down and wrote the whole chapter. And I think that's so important. And I love everything you had to say today about listening and your intuition and working with, what your body's trying to tell you. That's why I wanted to share this. That's why I wanted to talk with you on here today.
I'm so glad. I got the chills. I love that you put that into action and saw that result.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And it's such an important lesson for all of us, to just remember. It's like when we listen, really good things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very good takeaway. When we listen, good things happen. So I did want to wrap up because we've been on here for like half an hour. I didn't want to take your whole day. But is there anything else that you wanted to share with everybody before we wrap up?
Let me just I think what wants to come forward is that to really know that you're worth it, to really know that you and your message and what you're hearing and what you're feeling wants to be shared. There's a reason for that, and to really allow yourself to go through the feelings of feeling resistance, right? And feeling scared, and not try to shove yourself through it, but just hold yourself through it. Just like you would your kid or your dog or somebody that you knew that wiped out, and you're like, oh no, it'll be okay. And just love yourself through the process of coming into full expression and really bringing yourself out into the world. And not only just with the book, but just living your life in a fuller way. Just really allow, because I think that it's very hard to go through life without failing unless we're living in a bubble, and avoiding conflict doesn't work, because that creates a whole other level of conflict, right? And I think, that's the thing I just love about, if we don't avoid, and I'm not saying creating conflict, but I'm saying if you see that there's conflict there, whatever it is, because it'll happen, moving towards it and loving yourself through it, and showing up fully for it will change your life, because you'll know, I don't have to hide from anything. I don't have to hide from my book. I don't have to hide from my life. I can just be and show up all in. And that's what really wants to be shared. It's just the loving yourself through what shows up. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So much good stuff today. If you're watching the replay and you have questions for us, please drop them in the comments. We will get to them. Thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your wisdom. Can you tell everybody where we can connect with you? And then we'll put the links in the comments too.
Yes, absolutely. So you can either get me through our website, which is kaeleyarayne.com, or you can just email me directly at bliss@kaeleyarayne.com. Either way works really well.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Thank you everybody who is watching. You guys have a great day.
So wonderful. Thank you for having me.